Awards brought to you by CAF Performance with Style and हर मायका सब मायका नहीं होता.
It's back, India's most definitive opinion poll, broadcasting live from the India Today Mediaplex with Rahul Kanwal and the best political team on TV. India Today Group, Mood of the Nation 2013.
Welcome back. You're watching the India Today Group Mood of the Nation opinion poll, the most definitive opinion poll of the mood in the country this Independence Day. We've gone through the seats for various states. We've looked at the states where assembly elections will be held. We now want to focus on the national big picture. So without further ado, let me call those images on our screen. We want to look first at the vote share percentages. This is how it is at this time. The UPA picked up 36% of the vote, the NDA had about 26% of the vote, the others were at 38%. So what is changing? What would the new vote percentages be like? The UPA expected to lose about 8% of its vote share, coming down to 28%. The NDA likely to pick up 6% of the vote share, going up to 32%. Others from 38% to 40%. How does this translate into seats, and what could the new Lok Sabha look like? Let's first take a look at the 2009 Lok Sabha, where the UPA had 259 seats, the NDA had 159, others had 125. What could the new Lok Sabha look like? Because this is the most important question. The UPA's tally crashing by a whopping 122, coming down to 137. The NDA losing 5 seats. First, keep in mind the fact that the Janata Dal United is no longer part of the NDA, but they're actually coming down from 159 to 155. And then there are the others who are picking up 126 seats. Their tally at 251. That's a gain of 126 seats. So the real story, and I want to introduce at this time Ravi Shankar Prasad from the BJP, Abhishek Singhvi from the Congress Party joining us on this program. With me in the studio, Yogendra Yadav, Shiv Vishwanathan, Ashok Malik, Javed Ansari, KD Singh from the Trinamool Congress. I want to go across first to Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, because for all the hype around Narendra Modi, for all the talk of the anti-incumbency against the Congress government, the India Today Mood of the Nation opinion poll, Mr. Prasad projects that the NDA's tally is actually coming down from 159 to 155, a loss of 4. It's the others with a gain of 126 who are the biggest gainers from this opinion poll. Mr. Prasad, your thoughts?
First of all, let me presume, Rahul, that yours is the most definitive. It's a different matter that all those who conduct the survey call their conclusions to be most definitive. But I have no problem with that. You are entitled to call that. What is the bottom line of your projection? The bottom line is 2. Congress is losing heavily, 8%. NDA is getting 6%, regardless of alienation of JDU from us. This indicates the mood of the nation. The mood of the nation is anti-Congress for a variety of reasons which we need not go now. Now today the campaign is yet to start. Issues are yet to crystallize. What your survey serves to indicate is the mood of the nation. Now I would presume that once this whole campaign starts, issue gets crystallized, people start taking positions, this 6% is going to rise high and high, and this 8% of Congress is going to become down and down. Now coming to the second issue, that you see a lot of support in favor of non-Congress and non-BJP led alliances. That may be the case, but my concern is that you are keeping all these formations in one basket, which is against conventional political reality. Secondly, Rahul, with my own understanding of India's electoral politics for the last more than 30 years, as a very active participant, or even more than that, you are completely ignoring the changing mood of the nation. Post 98, people may go for regional party in a very substantial way in assembly elections, and they may continue to go. But as far as the Lok Sabha elections are concerned, the people's mood are increasingly coming toward one formation led by one of the principal political parties. It happened in 2004, it happened in 2009 in a very big way, earlier in 99 in favor of NDA. I would submit that once the electoral campaign takes full swing, this conventional mood of the country would again be reflected as far as Lok Sabha whole context is concerned.
Okay,
and the last issue I would like to flag that only last quick issue. Be it state elections or be it national elections, the political wisdom of the people of the country is not leaving a space for ambiguity. We have seen the case of Uttar Pradesh, where I campaigned very extensively. People gave such a conclusive majority to Akhilesh Yadav, Samajwadi Party. What happened? Let's leave it. Take the case of Bengal. People gave such a conclusive majority to Mamta ji. In my own state of Bihar, re-electing Raman Singh or Mr. Shivraj Singh Chauhan or Sheila Dikshit in Delhi. Rahul, people are not giving a scope for ambiguity or uncertainties. That is an important development which crystallizes once the election approaches.
We can debate who's coming into power, but the one thing the poll, Dr. Singhvi, reflects very clearly is that the Congress is leaving office. It's going to be voted out. From the projections, the UPA losing about 8% of its vote share. Now the BJP can discuss and debate whether the others will stay with in the others category or gravitate towards the BJP. All that comes later. But Sonia Gandhi, Manmohan Singh and the Congress seem to be on their way out, Dr. Singhvi.
Before I start, because I've been waiting but I couldn't hear anything, can you tell me the figures?
Okay, let me take you through the figures, Dr. Singhvi. The Congress's tally likely to come down from 259 to 137, a loss of 122. That's the UPA's tally. The NDA's tally coming down 4 seats from 159 to 155. Nitish, of course, is no longer part of the NDA. The others are the biggest gainers according to our poll projections. Their tally going up from 125 to 251, a gain of 126. The UPA's vote share coming down 8%. The NDA's vote share going up 6%, sir.
No, I heard that. I heard that. Now can I just respond, and I hope you will give me my requisite time. Let me start with my boring caveat with which I start all these programs, and howsoever boring, you have to hear it for a minute, half a minute. I don't accept these surveys and opinion polls. Indeed, a time came in 2004 and 2005 when you stopped doing it for 2 years. By you, I don't mean your channel, but most national channels stopped doing these surveys because you went so woefully, so absurdly wrong in the 2003 to 2005 period. In fact, a survey of surveys done at that time found and proved the errors. So let's not treat it as gospel truth. I certainly do not, and that simple reason for that is that unlike Western countries, you have the most diverse spot on earth, India, and India's diversities cannot, howsoever efficient you are, be captured in the miniaturization which a poll does by a sample survey. But having said that, let's play your game because we are on the program and you have a survey. So let's accept your survey as it is. And let's see the following points which emerge. Number one, for all this hype, for all this bravado, for all this jingoism, for all this chest thumping and shouting, you ultimately come down to a difference between 137 and I forget the figure you mentioned, 154 or 155 between the UPA and the NDA as you see it. What is that difference? For a third time person going into election, a third time incumbency, that is twice incumbent and a third time fighting an election, you have a difference of less than 17 or odd seats. That tells its own story. If your survey was even slightly wrong, that difference could be very easily eradicated. So there is no such sweep by any non-Congress, non-UPA formation, and I'm assuming, of course, what I don't accept at all. Secondly, take the rest. You put the rest at 250 something, 252 or whatever. I want to ask you a question, and I want your very, very experienced panelists sitting in your channel to consider that question. Let's assume you are right and we have 137 and they have 155 and you have 250 floaters out there. Go down state by state and ask yourself the question, who is going to align with a Modi-led, BJP-led NDA? That's a very important question. Let's start from the east. Is Mamata Banerjee falling over herself to align with them? Is Mr. Naveen Patnaik, BJD, doing that? Is Mr. Farooq Abdullah going to do that? Is Akhilesh Yadav or SP or Mulayam Singh Yadav going to do that? Is BSP very likely to do that? And so on and so forth. So, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Go on, sir.
Hello?
Go on, we can hear you just fine.
Hello? Hello? Yes. Now, if therefore, on your showing, if the third group cannot make a government of its own and push comes to shove, and they have to make a combination with a UPA alliance or with a non-third front, it is but obvious that the Congress-led UPA is much more likely, has a larger footprint and a greater resonance in finding allies. This is of course playing your game and going by your figures. The third point which is very important is that today the BJP is left with core allies. The Badals, the Shiv Sena and a few stragglers here and there. According to me, a Modi-led, BJP-led NDA will exacerbate and widen that huge hiatus. You only have a breakaway from some 23 parties at one time to 3 or 4 parties. But post-election, given the electoral profiles of these parties, the various parties whose names I took, just look at their electoral profiles, their backbone, their support system. It is extremely unlikely. That leaves you, of course, with the country with the choice of the third front. Now the third front, let's see how it forms. The third front has a problem. It has a serious problem of being discredited. It has a serious problem of getting their act together and holding together. In the third front you have the Mamatas and the left. How do the two get together? You have the DMK and the AIDMK. You have these inherent, you have the SP and the BSP. You have these inherent contradictions. Now if you have these inherent bipolar, opposite pole contradictions, who will join whom? Except under the leadership of somebody they consider to be secular and all India and pan India. And it's your very clear choice whether that will be the NDA or the UPA.
Okay.
And I think your very figures show that it has to be the UPA.
That's an interesting analysis, and you're saying that we should now try and look at how the electoral calculus could play out. So if these were the numbers we end up with, in fact somebody just tweeted to say that Pranab Mukherjee needs to get hold of a Saradon. Let's see what might happen, and we'll consider two scenarios. One, the scenario that Abhishek Singhvi talks about, the possibility of a third front government supported from within or without by the Congress, and then whether Narendra Modi-led NDA will be able to pull in allies to form a government. Let's first, because there's so much hype around Narendra Modi, let's deal first with the NDA alternatives. So let's bring in the BJP with 130 seats. They need to go up to 272, mind you. Let's put into this NDA rung the AIADMK, because Jayalalitha has a good equation with Modi. It's highly probable that she will support Narendra Modi, and that takes the NDA now up to 160. Now you could say that maybe the YSR Congress in some way would support the NDA. Some of our panelists are already disagreeing, but I'm just trying to add up the numbers to see where we could end up. The JDU has 10, they definitely will not support Narendra Modi. The TRS, let's for the sake of political expediency say KCR is prepared to do business at a good cost with Narendra Modi. His 12 seats now come into the calculus. The Shiv Sena, of course, with 15 has to be added because they're a part of the NDA. They're now up at 200. The Akalis, of course, need to be brought in as well. That's at 7. Chandrababu Naidu has 9 seats, but so far he says he will not do business with Narendra Modi. So I'm going to keep that out for the time being. Let's assume that the JVM can be brought in. That takes you up to 207. Now is when it gets a little tricky, because the RJD has 14. There is no way Lalu is going to swing and back Narendra Modi. The BJD, they've done business with the BJP in the past. Naveen Patnaik doesn't want to do business with Narendra Modi, doesn't want to do business with the BJP, he says. But just still, for a moment, let me put Naveen Patnaik into this calculus. that still takes the BJP only up to 220. And I'm assuming that Narendra Modi is no longer a contender because some of these allies will not come in if Narendra Modi is still at the helm of the NDA. Let's bring in the JMM also. They're prepared to do business with whoever they can do business with. Takes you up to 223. The SP, I don't really see supporting a BJP government. Mayawati is unlikely to. Maybe from the outside she could, she might. Unlikely though, but since we have to form a government, let's put her in as well. That still takes the NDA up only to 250. Modi is no longer in the fray. Even if it is somebody else like a Sushma, Rajnath or Jaitley, 250 is all that the NDA gets. Let me get Ravi Shankar Prasad's view. I've put in a lot of parties that might not be willing to support the NDA in this electoral fray. And as Singhvi raises the question of Narendra Modi's acceptability, several of these people will definitely not want to do business with a Narendra Modi-led BJP. What do you make of this, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad?
Well, Rahul, I am a little amused.
Yes.
Are we sitting on the counting day after 2014 elections? Come on, be a little serious, Rahul. We are dealing with India. And don't overstretch yourself to give a justification to your survey by making these kind of calculations, which makes me laugh as a serious political activist. I said it is only an indication. And remember one thing. Let me give you another indication of mine. In India, two basic formulations go. Secular communal, anti-Congress, pro-Congress. Regardless of the self-certification of Mr. Singhvi to give certificate who is communal and secular, I don't want to learn into that nonsense debate. India is past that. What you are ignoring is, once many formations come to recognize that the general mood of India is anti-Congress, all those formations in their respective states who have a problem with Congress would be reluctant to go to Congress, of which there are only two exceptions, Lalu Prasad and Mulayam Singh Yadav, who can do business with anyone. Now in this scenario, once the BJP's trend indicates of being the epitome of anti-Congress mood, you will see a swing change. Anti-Congress mood would become more important, anti-Congress will become more important.
You are entitled to
I would like to highlight.
Yes.
At least you give at least equal time.
Yes,
to me
you please complete your argument, sir. Complete your argument.
I wait for my turn. If you don't want me to speak, then stop me here itself.
Go on, complete your argument. Please, sir, complete your argument.
The third most important point I would like to highlight is where I would like to take Abhishek's point differently. You are again treating everyone beyond Congress and BJP or NDA, UPA in one basket. That is a fundamental fallacy you are trying to have here on this channel. Do you think Mulayam and Lalu can go together? Do you think DMK and AIDMK can go together? Do you think CPI, CPN and Mamtaji can go together? Do you think Mr. Naveen Patnaik can do business with Congress party in that state? Rahul, India's politics today is different. And my last take it, the party will decide later on whatever it has to decide, but the singular popularity of Narendra Modi in terms of epitomizing the aspiration of youth of the country, a quest for change, you have not factored in. We work on the ground as well. I remain on TV and equally remain very much active on the ground, touring at least a fortnight in the entire country. I know a little mood of the country. And once the whole issue gets crystallizes, I am sure the mood of the country will be different. And when you will do the survey after 2-3 months, you will find that.
Sure, we will do surveys later as well, and we'd be happy to change our opinion to reflect the mood of the country as it stands at that time. We're looking though at the mood in the country this Independence Day. We've looked at how difficult it will be for the NDA to form the next government. Let's see if Dr. Singhvi's prophecy could come true, because the third front has about 251, others have 251 seats. Let's see if a Congress government either the Congress is inside government or supporting a third front government from the outside. Let's see if it is easier for them to be able to form the next government. The Congress with 121 seats, I will definitely put in Mulayam with 34, the left with 32. That takes this formation up to 187. We can bring in the Trinamool as well with 23 seats. Oh, we can't bring in the Trinamool, I am sorry. We've already got the left, so there's no way the Trinamool is coming in. We take that out. We can bring in the RJD with 14 seats. We can bring in the BJD with 13 seats. We can bring in the YSR Congress with 13 seats. We can bring in the TRS with 12 seats. We can definitely bring in the, no, we can't bring in the Janata Dal United. You have to choose between the Lalu and Nitish. We can bring in the JMM with 3 seats. We can bring in the RLD with 2 seats. We can bring in the JVM with 4 seats. We can't bring in the DMK because you can only have one between Amma and this, and so let's bring in Amma with her 30 seats. Let's see if I can adjust that. Here we go. 30 seats, Amma, that is 278. Ola, we have a government, but what a government this will be. Yes, we can bring in more. NCP can come in very easily with its 6 seats. TDP can also come in. No, TDP, you already have TRS and you have the YSR. No, but you can't have the BSP because you already have the Samajwadi Party. Unless, okay, so our panelists are suggesting that the SP and the BSP can do business, but basically you already have a government at 284. But this is the sort of government that really will have Pranab Mukherjee fetching his Saradon. Abhishek Singhvi, you might be correct that the Congress will find it easier to find allies. But surely this sort of government, you've barely been able to transact any business with the mandate that you got. With this sort of a hodgepodge arrangement, the India growth story is done for.
Rahul, let me just answer a set of very interesting questions. First of all, it was I who started the program by saying that I have a huge caveat, I don't accept these surveys, and you yourselves have proved to be wrong. But we have to play the game on the basis of your survey. We cannot at the same time accept part of your survey and then say no, this survey is only a direction and we will do much better than the survey. The discussion we are having now is on the basis that you are right, howsoever imaginary it may be. So therefore, it is entirely up to, and the BJP and the NDA is entirely entitled to live in their cloud cuckoo land, to have the dreams of Mungeri Lal. But look at what you have done and look at how you have to struggle even on your survey, which is supposed to be a survey which shows Congress down. Just see how you are struggling. First point, you are struggling because you are putting BSP, KCR, I forget 2 more you put, 2 no, I think you put the BSP, the KCR and 2 more names into the NDA fold to come to your figure. It is Naveen Patnaik you put as well. It is extremely doubtful whether that will happen. After putting all those very artificially and laboriously, you reached only 250 barely. When you put the figures in the Congress UPA, you found it much easier to do it. The reason is very different. The reason is that at the national level, howsoever much some of these parties may be fighting us at the state level, because unlike most of the parties, the Congress has a pan-India presence, and therefore most parties do fight us at the state level. But they always make the distinction, and have historically made it many times, between a national alliance, if there is a vacuum at the center, and a state level fight. And therefore it is much more likely if parties whose electorate profile, and that's the crucial point missing in any analysis by the NDA or the BJP, where the electoral profile, the voting profile of parties like BJD, SP, BSP, Trinamool, TCR, TDP, all this is taken into account. All of these will be much more inclined for their philosophy, their ideology, their projection, their symbolism, to go with a non-Modi, non-BJP, non-NDA led combine. That's the crucial point. And anybody who simply brushes it aside by saying things like we'll do extremely well, and we are, seeing the ground reality changing. Is first of all, of course, ignoring the parameters of this program, and secondly is ignoring a very real reality of India, because whether you like it or not, the division in this country is secular communal. Obviously, those who are communal will like to brush aside that word, but obviously a watershed dividing line in this country, much more clear and dividing than any Congress, anti-Congress or other phrases, is the secular communal divide. There are parties which are clearly in the fold on one side, and the Shiv Sena never pretends to be the other way. The BJP tries to pretend, but has always been put in this fold, and that's why it has a Shiv Sena as a partner.
Okay.
So
Gaurav
this is
Bhatia,
a reality which is being ignored.
Gaurav
And last
Bhatia,
but
now
not the
this
least,
is
Rahul,
the Congress
point
and
of
the
matter
BJP
is
can have their
that
disagreements.
today,
But this is the sort of khichdi government that India does not want. Manmohan Singh is barely being able to handle the allies that he has. It's such a struggle to try and transact any business. How will Mulayam, Jayalalitha, Mamta, all these powerful satraps with their big egos ever do business together? This is a disaster. Gaurav.
Yeah, Rahul, I was hearing all the senior panelists. Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad is there, and he said that the mood of the nation is anti-Congress. I would also like to say that I do not agree with him when it comes to BJP, because it is also clear from the survey that the mood is not pro-BJP. In fact, the survey clearly shows that there is a huge desire to have a third alternative. The regional parties are doing very well. In UP, the SP is doing very well. In Tamil Nadu, IRDMK is doing very well. In West Bengal, TMC is doing well. And all these put together actually reflect the true mood of the nation, that they do not want a Congress or a BJP government in the center. Now, to say that Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad also said Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav and Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav would not be together. I think we don't have to go too far in history. They were together earlier, they have transacted together, have immense respect for each other, and all these parties have a very cordial relationship, barring a few. So, when there is a common agenda of forming a stable government, they can definitely come together, have a common minimum program, and have a strong third front. And also, add to that, the momentum is in the favor of regional parties. And why is it so? Because the voters of states do not want fly-by-night central leaders coming to the state, not delivering. In the state of UP, all the electorate wants is that there should be a permanent leader like Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav and Mr. Akhilesh Yadav, who will hear his problems and would not leave the state. And that also applies to other states.
Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, are you concerned? Are you concerned with the inability of the NDA to translate anti-incumbency against the Congress into seats for the NDA? There is so much hype around Narendra Modi, there is so much hype around corruption, policy paralysis of the UPA, but just the way things are, what might happen in the future we don't know, but on the back of the 9 years of anti-incumbency, surely the NDA and the BJP should have been doing better than they are at this time. Is that an area of concern for you, Mr. Prasad?
Well, let me put it like this. First of all, Rahul, before I come to you, let me warmly congratulate Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, because the arrogant manner in which he has sought to give reply, it appears the Congress government has been formed. All right, I congratulate him. Let him select the Prime Minister also of Congress, no problem. If that is the way Congress party is to take survey. Well, Rahul, I never question any survey's findings. It can be in my favor, it can go against me. But you have got the right to take the survey. I always take these surveys as indicative of the mood of the nation or mood of a particular state if it is a state elections. And my take is that this survey or other surveys are only indicative of the mood, that the mood is anti-Congress. Maybe we have to improve. Maybe we have to take stock of our situation. Maybe we have to plug the loopholes. Maybe we have to rectify certain things which are missing. I take these surveys in that light only, that the gap areas need to be properly plugged. But let me just tell you one thing. You must have seen I have never questioned any survey. Because that is your right. I respect it. But at least in 2 states, your today's surveys is going to be completely wrong. Is in case of UP and my own state of Bihar. I wish to tell you with all sense of responsibility. Because I also have feedbacks, I move. I am not saying with any sense of arrogance, it is in all humility. In 2 other channels, their reports have been completely different as to what you have projected here. They equally claim to be very authentic. But I am not going to that debate. Purely from my own political experience, regardless of the very eloquence of Mr. Bhatia, and I like his eloquence, he is a good young friend. In case of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar,
Okay.
this survey is going to be completely wrong.
I want to
That's
throw
how I
it
take
open now
And
to our guests in the studio. I'll start with Yogendra Yadav. Your sense. Thank you very much,
Rahul, I
Mr.
will
Ravi
take
Shankar
you.
Prasad, for joining us. Mr. Arun Jaitley is joining us in just a moment from now. But before that, I want to get the sense of our guests in the studio, starting with Yogendra Yadav.
I should say 1 or 2 technical things before I get into anything else. One is that there is some strange relationship between votes and seats. You seem to be saying that NDA will increase its vote share by 6 percentage points nationally and yet lose seats. That normally doesn't happen.
No, but
There's
that's also
something
because
odd
the
here.
Janata Dal United has moved out of the NDA.
No, but are we not taking the vote share into account? There is some really